comes on stream as quickly as possible. Of course, there are considerations for Warri, Kaduna, and the others for privatization where it's possible. But if not possible, about 1.5 billion have been paid out about 2 years ago with additional funding that has come in the last 1.5 years to get them activated. And you see, when they're on stream, even if you want to privatize, you have added value and the country can get more. Of course, privatization is in sight, but also getting them active and productive is critical so that the value can increase. But I think the focus right now, as NNPCL said, is to have the second arm of the Port Harcourt refinery. Don't forget, the king of all our refineries is the Port Harcourt refinery. And I think if you get the old one, which is on now, and the newer one comes on, I think that would be a big leap under this administration.
Leave me, the big question on the mind of many Nigerians is how will fuel production, increase in fuel production in Port Harcourt refinery, for instance, impact directly on the price of fuel for the consumer? Should Nigerians expect the price of fuel to crash, for instance, in the coming days? Absolutely.
You recall that about 2 weeks ago, under the oil sector reforms, looking at some of the impact we've had, was a prediction that you will see some kind of reduction in the pump price. And in the last 3 days, it was widely reported that the 50 naira closing to 100 naira reduction. But let me tell you what happened today. We saw Dangote Group advertising its PMS at a particular price. That has never happened. Now, the competition that is needed, market forces, is forcing competition because NNPCL is producing, Dangote Refinery is producing, the modular refineries are producing, and 9 other refineries are producing. Now, you're going to have the market forces play. For the first time, I saw Dangote Refinery advertising that we have PMS and we sell at this price. So that ultimately will impact the pockets of Nigerians. It's not going to may not be significant in the short run, but absolutely, in the long run, it's going to be significant. It's going to obey the laws of demand and supply. Of course, we also know that there's a dollar component of it. But while the dollar component might still be slightly high, the cost of transportation, for instance, in the Port Harcourt region, and also states that are closer to the refineries, will witness significant reduction in the PMS prices, but also it will spread across the country eventually. But I think we've moved from zero refining, zero, to a point where we are almost at 25–30%. And for me, that is progress, and there's a success story in what happened in Port Harcourt yesterday.
Nigerians are counting on that, especially what it means for how much they pay per litre of PMS. Looks like it's a good week for the presidency in the midst of the many criticisms in recent times. The recent GDP growth figures are quite encouraging, growing by 3.46% compared to 3.19% in the second quarter. But what specific policies, Mr. Dari, will government implement this time to sustain this growth and address the country's economic challenges? Because for the average Nigerian, it all boils down to their purchasing power. They're asking, how can they afford buying food this December, for instance?
Well, absolutely. You know, December is a good marker. But I think if you back up a little bit from the onset, the president was clear about the journey ahead. We've had some headwinds when it comes to the Nigerian economy and the numbers, which is also, if you benchmark it against what happens across the world, it's the same headwinds. But every country has to deal with its own peculiarities. And that's why you've seen this president introduce key reforms in about 13 to 14 different sectors. And when, you know, I tell you, it's time to turn the page. We've had 18 months of explaining this. It's time to turn the page in the sense that we'll need to now tell Nigerians and show the impact, the fruits that have been born from these reforms. And it's the collectivity of these reforms that will eventually ease the inflation, that will ease the high cost of living. For instance, you look at the minimum wage. It might not be sufficient, but we've had at least a response from this government. You also look at the number of jobs created for MSMEs alone, 240,000 direct jobs. You look at manufacturing, 75 billion naira for 75 manufacturing companies. More than 21 of them have drawn that money. And so all of these are injection of funds to different sectors of the economy, to the young people, to the small businesses, medium businesses, All of this injection of funds circulates in the economy and improves the volume of trade, the volume of commerce that we have in the economy. And I think there's one singular objective on the part of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, to make sure that this economy is revved back again, but also making sure that we have the necessary foundation for us to be able to progress, so that we don't go back and forth when it comes to inflation. The inflation is high right now, but as other elements from fiscal to monetary policies are taking place, as our manufacturing industries crank up and employment numbers also crank up. We've seen in the recent report, it's dropped by 4.6%. It might be minuscule, but then we've seen progress. Every little progress, when it comes to reforms, is not a jump from 0% to 100%. Reforms are progressive, yielding impact and results. And that's why we've decided that we're turning the page. We'll be looking at 13 sectors under the Tinubu reforms tracker. Looking at each of these sectors, we're looking at expected outcomes. We're looking at impacts in the short, medium, and long term, so that Nigerians can really see the numbers and know that the sacrifices being made, the difficulties being faced right now, there is something coming in forms of dividend to show that we're on a journey, and this president is certain about the destination he wants to take the economy of this country.
President Tinubu, as we speak, is out of the country, as well as his vice president, Kashim Shettima. There are controversies around these very frequent trips, and that's what we'll be talking about after this break. Stay with us, everyone. Don't go away. Special Advisor, Media and Public Communication to President Bola Tinubu, Sunday Dare, is my guest on the show this evening. Thank you for staying the course on the program. President Tinubu has now begun a state visit to France to honor an invitation from President Macron. Vice President Shettima has also left for Abidjan. I'm wondering what you make of concerns about the frequency of foreign trips by the president and the vice president. Can you justify, for instance, the necessity of these trips and provide details for Nigerians as regards their benefits? Because there are some who are saying, you know what, there are too many problems back at home. Maybe you should just stay around for a while.
Well, this is a concern that has dogged virtually every administration, from the Obasanjo presidency to the Jonathan presidency, to the Buhari presidency, the frequency of trips. And it speaks to one fundamental thing. Presidents are the chief marketing officers of their countries. They have to interact. When he travels and he goes to these forums, he also meets with other world leaders. That means beyond President Tinubu traveling, other world leaders do travel. And that is for a reason. They're the chief marketing officers of their countries. They go there to speak to the potentials of their country. And I think that for a country looking for foreign direct investment, for a country that is trying to pursue a new trajectory when it comes to developing critical sectors of its economy, there is a need for a new president, just 18 months in the saddle, to quickly make sure that he interacts with other presidents, but also the investors, the big international organizations who are present at most of these meetings that he attends. And I think we should see it from that focus. The work of the president, yes, he has some work at home, but he cannot be a sit-at-home president. He needs to go out there and speak for this country. He needs to make a strong pitch. The president is the biggest, number one spokesperson of his administration. Our president is believable. He has the experience, both cognate and political. And I think that these trips are not just trips for... they're not junkets. When you look at when the Indian Prime Minister came, that trip was critical for us. The last time they met was at the G20 in India. We saw the high-level meetings that held. We saw the foreign direct investment promised. We saw almost 35% of that has come in. We saw a recommitment on the part of the Indian government through his Prime Minister to support us when it comes to mining, when it comes to agriculture, and other critical areas, when it comes to IT, when it comes to CNG. You see, it's an ongoing conversation. Presidents come here to visit, he gets invited to go. And some of these visits and these events are annual, where every world leader goes. We don't want a Nigerian president to be absent from there.
Clearly, Mr. Dari, and it sounds really good. But what happens when both of them are out? Who's in charge?
Well, let me say this. The vice president is just across the border. You also know that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is not a president that does not delegate. We have a structure of government. It is about institutional rationalization in the sense that we have institutions that are functional. Every institution in this country is working from the judiciary to the legislature and to also the executive. And I think it's about institutions, not about the person that is in situ. And it's important, that point must be made. The president is briefed occasionally. He has just landed in Paris. I know certain briefings I've held already. I've had people with him that have contacted me on a couple of things. And of course, so the trip by the vice president was important. It was a timely trip, and it's just across the border. Where he went is less than 3 hours, 3 hours, 15 minutes. And I'm sure he's right back here tonight.
He has been president for just about 18 months. One of the biggest controversies about this administration is the question of why Mr. President needs what a State House correspondent calls an army of town criers. Nigerians for a long time have been accustomed to hearing from the president through a single mouthpiece. The presidency now has a large team of spokespersons. Of course, there are 3 SAs, and there are quite a number of others occupying roles like the SSAs. There are questions about the cost and efficiency of this arrangement. Can you explain the rationale behind the structure and how it serves the interests of Nigerians?
Well, let me answer this from 2 simple angles. First, the president is the commander-in-chief. The president builds his team. For instance, by law, he can, as approved by the National Assembly, he can hire as many as over 25 to 40 special advisors. If you look at it, it's not even halfway or a quarter of the way through that. That's one. But the right of Mr. President to determine the number of those that will work for him, not just in the media department, but several other departments, that right cannot be withheld. And I think this is a president that places premium on making sure that the people are engaged, or making sure that the information, public information, communication space is democratized, such that the policies and initiatives of his government are communicated on a consistent basis. That's one. 2, back up. Look at the American presidency. Look at their media setup. That's the largest democracy in the world. They have several layers. They have people speaking for government at various levels, singing from the same hymn book. And I think we need not just dwell on this matter of the number of people working for the government. I think what's important is that we have seen that there's a need to deepen communication. There's a need to make sure that these policies are explained on a consistent basis, to make sure that Nigerians get, they have the buy-in and understand that the efforts on the part of government is bearing fruit. And I think that's what's important at this time. Every president decides the number of aides he wants. Every president decides how he wants to communicate with the people. And I think we should give this president the benefit of the doubt in the decision he has taken to bring in core professionals to do this job for him.
Well, some of the things people have talked about is the fact that at this critical juncture in our nation's history, there is need for government to show, some understanding by cutting significantly the cost of governance. But for those who are also familiar with the nomenclature,
but the cost of government is being cut in critical areas, and if it bears repeating at this point, you look at when it comes to the number of aides, security aides of our ministers, number of vehicles that they're on. But also, let's talk about the bigger numbers. Our debt to whatever ratio has gone down from 90-something% to 68%. We're repaying about 16 different loans inherited by 3 or 4 administrations. The country is inching towards a $1 trillion economy from about $437 trillion that we have right now. So the government is doing something right. And you see, all these indicators, these are the big numbers. And that is what we need to look at. Are the big numbers coming down? Because once you're able to bring down the big numbers, you free up resources for the country. Now, and I think that's the most important at this point.
All right. You know, for those familiar with the nomenclature of the president's media aid, they typically will know who captains the ship. Nigerians want to know who heads this team of the president's special advisor in this regard.
Nifemi, we have a team. I think the mentality is that we have a team of professionals working together. And because we are core professionals, we know what to do. We've met. We're clear about the parts. When you look at the designation also, it's very clear. And, you know, back up to what a newsroom is like. You have an editor, you have an editor-in-chief, you have a deputy editor-in-chief, you have a copy editor, you have a sub-editor, you have reporters spread around. And they work together to produce a newspaper daily that is comprehensive, that is factual, that is readable. They also work together to produce weekly magazines. A television station also shows up on the top of the hour because having so many people working in the background, the strength. And I think that's the way we operate. We have a cooperative, we have a collegiate.
Are you saying, Mr. Dari, are you saying that the president is not concerned about the need for various spokespersons, for instance, to be coordinated and speaking with one voice to avoid confusion and mixed messages?
We're coordinated. There are no divergent forces. There are no divergent voices. We're coordinated. We're coordinated. We're coordinated. And when you look at what we have, there is a coordination. You understand? So this idea that we're not coordinated, I don't know where it's coming from. I'm right inside the team. I don't see that. We know what we need to do. We're getting the job done. And I think it's important. Our main primary responsibility is to make sure that we run a coherent strategic communication for this president in terms of the policies, the initiatives and programs of this government. But also making sure that we stay consistent on messaging so that people understand that this president is about changing the fundamentals of our economy and improving the lives of millions of Nigerians who have voted him into office.
We have completely run out of time, but you recently launched the Tinubu Reforms Tracker, and we're showing the slides on the screen just now, projecting what this administration has been able to achieve and how, you know, government will ensure that these reforms are implemented effectively and transparently. Many Nigerians are concerned that perhaps prior to this time, we haven't been hearing much about precisely what this government is doing. In a minute, if you can, what can Nigerians expect from this initiative and where can they get the information?
Absolutely, thank you. The Tinubu Reforms Tracker, which is from the media team, is to say that 18 months down the road, we can begin to turn the page. We can begin to come out with results about some of these key reforms. We've looked at, we're looking at 13 various sectors. Already we've done that of the oil sector. We've done the one for MSMEs. We're moving to manufacturing. And I think what we're going to get is we're going to get nuggets of information that is critical. Not just numbers about those that have benefited and the impact, but also critical and unique information will be given to Nigerians to know that these opportunities exist. And then they can apply themselves to it. We have found out that many people do not even know that these opportunities exist. You have 918 billion for de-risking. We have 50 billion for MSMEs, low credit to start businesses. So we believe this will serve two purposes. First, provide updates, impact assessment of what these things have done, and also unique information that will empower Nigerians to apply themselves to these opportunities spread across almost 13 or 15 sectors in our economy.
Special Advisor, Media and Public Communication to President Bola Tinubu, Sunday Dari, thank you so much for talking to us, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you, TVC, for having me, and have a good evening.
That's our show today, everyone. You can watch it again at midnight and at 6 a.m. tomorrow. I am Nifemi Oguntoye.